Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am back here with another video. Now, if you know anything about April, and anybody that knows that the month of April is usually many things, which is Easter, which being one of them. It could also be April Fool's Day, but did you know that April is also the month for Autism Awareness Month, which I'm actually glad about it, but this is also coming from how it started. And it comes from a charity I put very lightly on that started this way back years ago, and that charity happens to be Autism Speaks. Now, if you guys don't know, I made a video like 3 years ago talking about my opinion of Autism Speaks. I hate them. I'm not even gonna candy coat that. I really fucking hate the so-called charity. They are terrible. They have been known to be one of the worst charities ever by Charity Navigator. Believe me, trust me, you can look it up and see why. To this day, 3 years later, I'm making another video about against Autism Speaks. I still hate them, and it only gets worse from here because I found an article from the Washington Post. Yeah, I know. Just go along with it. I don't like them either. But I found this article right here. The biggest autism advocacy group is still failing too many autistic people. Yeah, you see where we're going here? So I am going to read the article. It's actually surprisingly not very long, despite several screenshots of this. It's really not gonna drag too long, so the entire article for you if you want to read it yourself without me talking over it. I'll leave the article down in the description below for you guys read, and then we'll definitely get to what I think about what Autism Speaks as a whole is still in 2022 as I record this. Editor's note: this article has been updated to reflect several corrections. Autism Speaks did not assert that autism destroys parents' lives. Its toolkit for parents does not say grieving is an inevitable consequence of their child's diagnosis. A paragraph describing the organization's spending on research to find an autism cure was not correct and has been removed. So, just to point out on this entire article, what that means is that Autism Speaks told the specific editor of the Washington Post that pretty much what they weren't saying is that they were finding a cure for autism, and that it didn't, like, make parents' lives miserable, which is clearly false. We're gonna go into why, because I still believe that Autism Speaks still believes that to this day. Autism Speaks celebrated its 50th anniversary this week with a colorful new logo to replace its traditional blue puzzle piece. In a video, the organization said it was sharing a new, more inclusive Autism Speaks that represented the infinite diversity of perspectives and experiences of people with autism. On the surface, including many diverse voices and acceptance of autistic people seems nice. The problem is that Autism Speaks has actively contributed to the hostility that autistic people face. Obviously, the organization did not create that hostility, which has caused great suffering, but at the largest nonprofit related to autism, it spent years promoting ideas and information that furthered stigma and misunderstanding about the condition. In 2009, Autism Speaks released an ad titled "I Am Autism" that portrayed autism as a silent and sinister killer. The ad claimed that autism works faster than pediatric AIDS, cancer, and diabetes combined, and assures that marriages will fail, financial ruin will ensure, and that it will rob parents of their children and dreams. Now, I wanted to comment on that particular paragraph because I do actually remember that particular ad when I first watched it, and let me just say right now, it angered me. It angered me a lot. I watched that ad back on YouTube, I would say around in 2015 or so, years ago, and my piss is still to a boil when I first saw that. And one YouTuber named Mr. Enter, or the mysterious Mr. Enter, was really the person that really called this freaking ad out. I do remember that particular video about it. It is still a good video to watch, even with that video being back in 2015 he recorded it back then. I will leave a link down in the description for you to watch it. Even though it is like years old, it is still a good video to watch why Autism Speaks is a load of shit. Autism Speaks has run high-profile advertising and fundraising campaigns suggesting that autism is a malevolent force that afflicts families and makes parents miserable. A few smaller groups, like Cure Autism Now and Defeat Autism Now, predated Autism Speaks, but none have had its massive budget and wide reach. The narratives about autism that Autism Speaks has put forth have defined and shaped autism in the public imagination. Toxic parenting myths make life harder for people with autism. That must change. Autism Speaks goals have seemed to change little. Last summer, it partnered with Sesame Street to promote a toolkit for parents of newly diagnosed children that, among other things, compares autism to leukemia and suggests that mourning is a normal responsive to learning of an autism diagnosis. There is an entire section of the tool kit that walks parents through the Kubler-Ross stages of grief: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. First of all, I just want to say this. I had no idea that Autism Speaks was partnered with Sesame Street. Was that the episode where Julia, the new character with autism? I hope not. That is disgusting. I'm even shocked that it was partnered with Sesame Street out of all shows. I'm not even sure I might look at that show the same way again. I mean, I grew up with Sesame Street, and to find out that it partnered, I seriously can't believe it. That is sickening that they would be partnered with a public broadcasting show made for children that I watched growing up. I seriously, I don't know. That is really, I really hope not. But at the same time with this article, I'm speechless. That's all I have to say there. Many parents must mourn the loss of some of the hopes and dreams they had for their child before they can move on. The guide notes in the section on sadness: autism is neither a degenerative nor a fatal condition. No one dies of autism, but the rhetoric in the toolkit made autism diagnosis sound as though a child has died. Which I do have to agree on that. I mean, it's ridiculous that there are still parents, even to this day, with all the medicine and all, like, how much technology is further into the medical system, still actually believe in some of this bull crap. I really, whether it's religious reasons or not, I don't know, but it just makes it sound like the parents who have a child with autism and they don't take it as seriously as, like, most professionals do. Listen, I'm not expecting parents to be a medical professional or not, but to have humanity, especially on your child, and to not be so discriminatory. And that's pretty much what Autism Speaks is telling parents, is that to be a fucking ableist. And I don't say that lightly, but that's really what it is. Whenever I hear about Autism Speaks, they're ableist towards people on the spectrum. According to its most recently available annual report, a little less than half of Autism Speaks' budget of more than $50 million in 2018 went to, quote, awareness campaigns and lobbying. Autism Speaks has constantly stood against autistic empowerment and self-advocacy on Capitol Hill. In 2014, the Autistic advocacy network said Autism Speaks lobbied heavily to kill an amendment to the Autism Cares Act that would have set benchmarks of the inclusion of autistic people in the research and policies that affect their own lives. The Autism Cares Act gives billions of dollars to provider organizations and nothing to autistic-led organizations, services, or quality of life improvements. The most recent reauthorizations of the bill, signed by President Trump, allocated $1.8 billion. I really have nothing to say about that. What? Seriously, $50 million? What are you using that money for? Plus, $1.8 billion? How? The fact that Autism Speaks have gone away with this for years? For years. I'm talking about years. Since 2005, when it was first founded. That's not a charity. That's clearly a scam. A multi-billion-dollar scam. That's the best way to put it. And yet this is all legal. Yeah, this is not helping us one bit. And not to mention the fact that this is government funded too, which I already knew that from the very moment when I first heard about the flaws of this so-called charity. The fact that it's government funded makes it so much worse, because now it's so much harder to shut down this. It's a company. It's pretty much a company at this point. This isn't a charity, and it's really sickening that in this day and age that something like this is not talked about as much. And I think with all the things, something about like showing diversity and, you know, respecting all pronouns or whatever, but yet when it comes to people who are disabled, it's like people don't talk about it as much, and it's disgusting. This just goes to show you how disgusting morally wrong Autism Speaks is even more. This is a time of growing acceptance of the concept of neurodiversity, the idea that autism and other neurocognitive disabilities are natural differences rather than afflictions. Dozens of major corporations, including SAP, Goldman Sachs and Ernst and Young, have launched Autism at Work initiatives to promote employment of autistic people in the technology sector. Hiring neurodiverse people like me can give companies a competitive advantage. At the same time, more autistic adults have argued that they need to be at the center of any policymaking that affects their lives. This contrasts with Autism Speaks, which was founded by Bob and Suzanne Wright when their grandson was diagnosed with autism. The objectives of the organization have largely involved serving families. They have resources for parents, siblings, and grandparents, but little for autistic people. The changes in rhetoric are meant to show that it is responding to shifts in society's understanding of autism, but the attempt to appropriate the aesthetics of neurodiversity without changing conduct or content comes off as oblivious and craven. Autism Speaks' new logo, which now includes a rainbow gradient instead of the organization's traditional blue, is meant to embrace the diversity of the autism spectrum. Since the 1990s, the symbol of neurodiversity has been an infinity symbol with a rainbow gradient for exactly that reason. But Autism Speaks does not acknowledge the connection in any of the materials it has released, promoting its new, more inclusive look. Listen, I'm all about diversity in the workforce, and listen, I am the last person to be arguing about this, but, I'm sorry, this does not help at all. Changing the logo and changing how it works in your so-called charity doesn't help at all with everything else that you've done in the past. I still remember the one time where Autism Speaks had one person that worked for them for, I think it was even one day, that was on the spectrum, and fired them because that person called them out for being an ableist, pretty much. Is that, just ignore what happened in the past, let's move on, which I'm normally in for that, but some mistakes are bigger than others. This is definitely one of those incidents. This is an incident where I cannot forgive the so-called mistakes. You guys did this on purpose. You're not an advocate for autism. You guys are ableist. It really shows that this entire so-called charity are ableist. They don't understand that it's a neurological disorder at all. You can't cure a neurological disorder. Like I said, changing a logo and changing what it used to be in the past doesn't really change what you've guys done that were way, way worse. Similarly, Autism Speaks said that it will use identity first language in its materials going forward, saying autistic people instead of people with autism. It cited a poll last year on social media as the reason for the change. But again, the organization is decades behind much of the autistic adult community. In 1999, before Autism Speaks was founded, one of the founders of the neurodiversity movement, Jim Sinclair, wrote an entire essay about preferring identity first language. Its change of heart came not because of a decades-long push for change by autistic advocates and organizations, but because of a Twitter poll. Which, yeah, again, I had to listen. I'm all about identity first language. You know, saying people with autism. And that's pretty much most of the time where I've said that with most of my videos. When I came out and said to my viewers on YouTube, I said, I'm somebody on the autism spectrum. I'm somebody who has autism. Very rarely have I ever called myself an autistic person. I mean, I personally don't care too much, but I know there's a lot of people who do. Yeah, I do have to agree with this article. Autism Speaks is still very, very much behind. I've just said it before. They're ableist who are acting like, oh yeah, we're definitely in for the rights for people with autism, when they really aren't, and they just prove that they haven't gotten much better over time. To those outside the autism world, this may seem like an insignificant semantic difference, but it represents how Autism Speaks has had a monopoly on how people discussed autism, and how it made a concerned effort to dismiss and disregard the opinions of autistic adults who have had the temerity to speak for themselves. Autism Speaks has chosen to embrace the aesthetics of neurodiversity without adopting its principles in any meaningful way. It wants to talk about inclusion and acceptance while continuing to fund and promote precisely the opposite, and do it without acknowledging or crediting anything neurodiversity advocates have said or done for the past 30 years, without even apologizing for the damage it's done. To quote Autism Speaks' latest campaign slogan, kindness counts. But while kindness counts, listening and understanding can go much further. I actually have to agree with that one. In other words, your actions speak so much louder than words. And yeah, that's pretty much what my biggest problems with Autism Speaks isn't just because they're just ableist. It isn't just because they don't accept what they preach about. It's also by the actions they have caused over time. I think, what people forget is that, sometimes words do matter, and a lot of times even more actions even mean a lot more than just what you say. And I have to just say this as somebody who's on the spectrum myself. Even though this article was posted way back in February of 2020, it still reflects on how awful this so-called charity is. They haven't gotten much better. Yes, they've changed their logo. Yes, they've changed their slogan pretty much, I would assume, by reading this. They still haven't changed when it comes to their actions. That's really the main thing. They're still not funding what they said they are, which, by the way, how people are donating to the so-called charity don't realize what it's for. It's basically for lobbying which, if you guys don't know what that is basically means to influence actions, policies, or decisions that are for government officials. And listen, if it's done in a good way, yes, but most of the time it's usually a very, very bad thing. And I don't want to get too political, but it's also a political thing too when you are donating the so-called charity for Autism Speaks. And you know, most of that money for Autism Speaks is going for mostly themselves, pretty much. It's not going for family services with people with family members that have autism, and it's not going for fundraising or helping out the victims of people with autism, pretty much. And it is victims, because if you really think about it, you know, all the people like myself who are on the spectrum, we get victimized way more than you think. Now, we may not get victimized as somebody who is a different race or by their sexual orientation, but we're pretty close on the top 10 of people victimized a lot, especially disabled people. And I can tell you right now, Autism Speaks does not make things much better. It makes things so much worse for us. And I also left this article down in the description below for you guys to read. So in conclusion, Autism Speaks is still awful. We'll never support them. And I hope they get shut down eventually. This needs to be said more than once, but apparently nobody talks about it as much like they're supposed to. Well, before I end this video here, I just want to say thank you to everyone who has watched my content, and also these two artworks here are Instagram users that I actually follow myself on Instagram. If you guys want to go check out their accounts, I will leave those down in the description below. The second artwork here that you guys see me draw on this time lapse here, they actually said that they were going through some hard times, and they actually really appreciated that somebody like me gave them something nice for them by making an artwork of them. So I will, like I said, leave the links down to their Instagram accounts down in the description below. One of them fluently speaks Spanish, so if you guys do speak that native language over there, I again left that account down in the description below, and the other one down there too. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, even though this was a way more depressing video. I will be still creating more content like usual. If you guys want to support me on Patreon, you guys go right ahead. I also left my other social media links down in the description below, as well as always. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all next time.